You're not going to like this, but Chicago's proposed mansion tax affects a lot more than just mansions. So the mansion tax is a taxation program that is being discussed and voted on at the present time.
Yep.
Essentially, high level, it is a tax, and there's a couple variations of it. It keeps getting amended and changed. But the thought process behind it is, should we be taxing the higher priced residential real estate sales at a higher level? And should we be pricing the lower priced ones at a lower level? So
currently when you buy and sell real estate, there's something called a transfer tax stamp.
yes, you buy your way into Chicago and you buy your way out.
I like to say it's a sales tax. It's like buying a t-shirt, buying
Totally.
anything else. But
Cost of business.
There is a cost to purchasing and selling homes here in Chicago. So that's what this is doing.
Exactly.
It's transitioning what's already in place and creating instead of a unilateral price, it's creating this dichotomy of a price.
Previously, everybody paid the same number, but the thought process is now is to tier that to say that properties under $1 million, that's the latest reiteration of it, are basically going to be taxed at a slightly lower number than they are now.
0.6.
And the properties between $1 million and $1.5 million are going to go to a significantly higher number.
It's like 200%
2
of like what's actually there.
It's a big increase.
It's a huge increase. It's going from 0.75 to
Absolutely.
2%.
And then it would be tiered even more so above that. So it'll go all the way up to 3% as the property values go up. Yeah. So essentially the idea, the thought process.
Why are we doing this?
Why are we doing this?
Why does Brandon, our mayor, want this?
So the cause behind this was so that we put more money to work with our issues with homelessness, right? So that we have more funds to put towards solving that issue and creating more solutions, which in theory, the thought processes are all good, positive thought processes. But as we talk a lot about, there's a lot of things that aren't being discussed and aren't being thought about in this, and where there could actually be some pretty negative ramifications that when you first digest the information, don't even come to mind.
Well, yeah, I mean, in theory, it sounds amazing,
right?
right? You're like, okay, cool. Yeah, tax, like, I understand we're going to spend a little bit more if you have a higher property because you have more money and it's going to go towards homelessness. But what do you think is the number one issue with this at the moment?
Well, the number one issue that's not being discussed is that there's already a lot of funds budgeted towards homelessness in Chicago on an annual basis. And the problem is not that. That is fantastic. The problem is that of all the budgeted funds, the city has only been using about a third of those funds.
Yeah.
So we already have it budgeted and we're not using the majority of what is already budgeted, but we're talking about putting more money into the hopper. So right off the bat, that causes pause. It causes doubt. It causes us to question the piece. So in my opinion, that's the first question that I have to ask is, if we're not using the funds that are already allocated for that issue.
National funds.
Yes.
And state funds.
Exactly.
This isn't like city-funded initiatives. Correct. This is something that's more
Yes,
higher.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, it's something higher that's coming. We are literally getting federal money from
that is not being used.
The state that's not being used.
So
that's the hard part.
The issue number two, in my opinion, the things that aren't really being thought about is I think it's very easy to say higher priced properties and people just to think automatically of a higher value, higher net worth person buying those properties.
Yeah.
But we live in a city, we live in a metropolitan area where in general, properties are expensive.
Yep.
So I don't ever mean to talk about money flippantly, but $1 million isn't what it is in certain areas.
Yeah.
And so I don't always think that we're necessarily thinking through all of the people that are going to buy properties above $1 million.
Yeah.
So one of the big things that we talk a lot about, right? There's been a lot in the news about commercial. There's been a lot in the news about immigrants. There's a lot of things talking about people come here to start new and to grow, right? One of the things that we see a lot, especially from our immigrant population, is that they tend to want to buy multi-unit properties where the entire family, different generations can live together, right? It is a means for them to get a nicer property in a nicer neighborhood for a lower cost. but that cost typically is going to be over $1 million in a lot of neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, we're taking a population of people that are coming here to try and grow and try and start a new phase of their life. And those aren't necessarily the same people that I think a lot of the consumers are just thinking taxation of the rich, so to say.
Yeah.
So we're making that more difficult for people to kind of start in that. So our multi-generational, multi-unit, whoa, that's a tongue twister, isn't it? Multi-generational, multi-unit purchasers absolutely will have some impact on it. Secondarily, almost on that same line, new businesses, right? This isn't including those storefronts that you see up and down our streets. The more popular locations of those storefronts are going to come with big price tags because people are trying to start businesses, they're trying to grow, they're trying to do all of that aspect. And if you tell them that all of a sudden it's going to cost them more, that's going to hit them harder because they may not be able to start up that business.
Because they already have like the build out costs. They have like all the other costs associated with
for certain
business.
For certain. And then the other thing, right? What has been one of the buzzwords of the last 3 years? Inventory. We have had major issues with inventory, and this type of tax is going to absolutely go after developers, right?
Yes.
And yes, people can say, oh, their profit margins can be lower. The problem is that right now, a lot of developers have paused their building because the profit margins are so low right now because of interest rates, the cost of dirt, the cost of supplies, labor shortages. All those things are causing our developers to take a step back and pause because there isn't enough profit in them doing their business. If they're not doing their business, we're not getting inventory back. If we're not getting inventory back, that is trickling all the way down to all of the other markets from that perspective.
I think a lot of it also has to do with like going from the trickle effect is the commercial aspect, because a lot of it is the downtown properties. And right now we're at the highest vacancy that we've ever experienced, especially in the last 75 years. And so they're saying, all right, well, those pricing on those home or on those commercial spaces are coming down. Yeah. So, I mean, that is something that we're not taking into effect when we're budgeting for it.
Yep.
Is you're already hitting a hard hit market. And so that's why this has been such a big thing.
For certain.
And when you look at budgeting, if that is coming down, then we budget our annual budgets based on commercial and residential taxes. And if we're not getting as much from the commercial side, it needs to shift somewhere.
For certain.
So
the other thing that I think that a lot of people aren't thinking about is the renters. The renters are saying, hey, sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
let's tax the people that are spending more money. But I think what they're not thinking about, there's no impact on them. They're trying to save up. They're trying to get into that property. But if the rental that they're living in costs more than $1 million, their landlord paid that money and is going to pay that tax and is going to pay those elevated costs. And the reality is it's going to cause rents to go up if the cost of doing that business goes up as well.
Yeah. And that's a lot of like the newer construction.
Well, I think it's them, but I also think that it's your 4-unit buildings. Yeah. It's your 8-unit buildings. It's all of those residences, right? You live in a 2-bedroom apartment in Lakeview. If somebody's buying that building, they're probably paying more than $1 million for it.
Yeah.
And they're going to raise rents.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like the one like thing that most of the people who are like super for it are saying is like, hey, you know what, they're increasing rents anyway already. But a lot of that has to do with property taxes because we've seen our property taxes go up significantly over the last couple of years. And landlords will always do something to cover their costs.
Yep. Yeah, no, otherwise they're going to sell the building.
That's the reason why they're doing this.
Yeah.
Is it's an investment strategy. So
no, and I think that's the backside of it, right? Is that I think that overall we're trying to implement something in a time in the market where if it costs more for people to buy and sell properties, less people are going to want to buy and sell properties. Yeah. And the reality is if we do that in a time when we already don't have enough inventory and affordability has become a hard to accomplish for a lot of people, this is something that in my opinion can actually make properties less affordable because everyone's going to be looking to try and figure out where those numbers come, and it's going to trickle from this market all the way down to our rental market. And I just think that it's, in theory, I think that there are some concepts that could be definitely taken from it, but I think in the way that they're trying to push it forward, and I think that there's a lot of people that could get in the short end of the stick on this one that aren't being considered right now.
Yeah.
we're going to know more next year
Yeah.
when it actually goes to vote.
Yep.
But
Lori
it is-
Lightfoot canceled it last year
Yep.
when she was in office. So this time we're seeing if the council will actually put it on the ballots, which is in March. And so that will put it to all of us to vote for it.
Yeah. So I think it's, I mean, the really
it
big thing to
could be
take
a
away, it's a very important topic. It impacts everybody. It really
Yeah, it
does.
does.
And I think it's important for people to understand how it could actually impact them.
Totally.
Because I think a lot of people are just turning a blind eye, and that when it comes time to vote, you figure out what the vote is you want to support.
Yeah.